Welcome to the both of you. Thank you for joining us this evening. Before we visit with them, just want to share the ground rules. There are none. We're going to visit about some things drawing from what they shared with you in the video and some other things perhaps, but this is in keeping with the spirit of inclusiveness. This is a conversation for all of us. So if something passes your mind as something you want to ask either of them, please do so. Just wave your hand. We'll stop and let you ask that question. So make it an open forum, if you will. I understand you have a lawyer in the family now. Is that correct?
We do, as on. Oops, it's on the side there, sorry.
Stand by for technical corrections.
Thank you. We do, as of May the 7th of this year, Jackie graduated up at Lincoln, Nebraska. So it's pretty nice. I thought that May the 7th that Dad finally got a raise. Unfortunately, May the 9th, she got engaged. So, but yeah, it's very nice. And she started work Monday for KLA, so we got her back into Kansas. We're very proud of that.
Congratulations to her, but she should be an in-house counsel for you, shouldn't she?
I think she pleads the fifth on that one.
Very good. Start with this. You noted in the video that you brought on your cattle operation partway into your multi-decade career in farming and have succeeded with it. Has that led to your success, that diversification? Where does that fit in the whole scheme of things?
Well, there's no doubt that it's led to the diversification of the farm. You know, I always said that the cattle operation was 3/5 for the labor and 1/5 for the income. And as I've sat down this year, we're going over the books, it kind of proves out to be that way in a lot of ways. So, but we wouldn't change that for the world. The cattle is an enterprise that we enjoy. It keeps us, it gives us the ability to keep the boys and the heart out there on the farm. Keeps them busy all the time, but that's a good thing. So that's really the good part about the cattle enterprise. You know, we only had about 10 head of cows when we started farming and had that for quite a while because we just didn't have time for them when we were starting out. But when the neighbors that I had worked for since I was a freshman in high school retired, and they sold their cattle operation, that's kind of what I talked about in the video with it. There was about 100 head of cattle in that operation that we purchased. And so that really jump-started our time with the cattle. And it was that we were at the land from them. So those neighbors helped us a tremendous amount. Started. I want to kind of go back just a second because we are the first generation full-time farmer. And we're kind of proud of that. But that was what my dad loved to do, probably more than anything else that he did. He was a good entrepreneur, running a milk business, a trucking business, and then farming a little bit on the side. And so everything we've done is just something that continued, from what he basically started.
Since you mentioned that, Joe, what inspired you to take the full-time farmer route then? Since your dad did it wasn't a hobby, but as a side venture. At what point did you decide this was going to be your career pursuit?
Well, again, that was early, because when I was a freshman in high school, I had a chance to lease a little bit of ground. And we only had a 40-10 John Deere to farm with at that time, but, that wasn't bad in those days. And then again, in the video, I mentioned that I lost a brother, an older brother, back in '66 in a car wreck. He was in the Air Force, and he had the love for farming. So if that hadn't happened, we don't know what we'd been doing today. But that was kind of a driver, for us. Dad loved the farm, but he knew that he couldn't raise 8 kids on the farm for what he had. And so he developed other businesses. But between he and Jim, I think they were the two drivers that propelled me to do what I wanted to do.
To be fair, Dana, did you grow up on a farm? We should ask.
No, I didn't. My dad worked for the railroad, and we moved about every 2 years for a long time until we landed in Neodesha. But I have an uncle that lived over by El Dorado Springs in Nevada, kind of in that area, and he farmed full time. And it was always one of my favorite places to go to visit. And of course, when you're just a kid and you're only there for a little while, you know, it's a little different than when you do it for a living. But yeah, I always look forward to living on a farm. And when we got engaged, I always laughed. I said, well, I only had 3 criteria. I've got to marry somebody that will take my horse it was just being boarded out the edge of town, my dog and my piano. So he would do it. So he fit the bill.
Believe me, I understand the concept of marry me, marry my horses. Been there, done that, still doing that. The family is involved now, and you mentioned again in the video that the duties have been split up. The boys have their specialties, but what was the thought process or the path that the two of you followed with them as you more or less helped define who would be responsible for what? How did you strategize that?
Well, I think it kind of in the video, it just almost became natural. It really, I have to be honest, it really wasn't a strategy. Justin, the oldest, coming out of a financial institution after 10 years, he'd been working there part-time and weekends. So he knew the operation totally. I mean, he grew up on it. And so, like I said in the video, he did the planning duties and a lot of the harvest duties. So he had that information already in the computer. So it was easy just for him to take it to the state crop insurance and get those things done. Being the guy that does most of the planning, or almost all the planning, he decides pretty well on his own what the varieties are that we're using for that year. He does a lot of tests within those varieties to determine which ones are best suited for our farming operation. Wade, on the other hand, had an apple science degree from K-State, but then he sold the equipment over at Juanito for 10 years. So he knew the technology on the equipment side. So Wade handles all the equipment purchases and decisions as far as that's concerned. He runs the spray rig, so he has all the spray records. He takes care of almost all the harvest records because he pretty well taken care of the arbor wagon that has the scales on it. So everything's just kind of evolved pretty natural. Kind of an easy decision on who takes care of what. And then, of course, Dana is a clerk of the school district ever and retired. But so she's always kept track of the books and kept me kind of in a straight line of where I needed to be, really.
So formally, what is the business structure? Is it C? What do you have? How do you have this packaged?
Okay, so we're set up with an LLC for Heritage Farms that we operate under for liability purposes mainly, but that's what we operate normally under. We also operate our personal part of it, that's Newland Farms, and then each one of the boys has a third part. So we will operate basically on 4 entities, but with the umbrella of Heritage Farms.
With the flexibility for another generation, somewhere down the line.
You always hope so, that the grandkids, somebody would come back in at some point in time, but not sure that's going to happen for sure, but there's a lot of time left there.
And if you have anything you'd like to ask the Newlands, wave your hand, we'll get your question in right away. Ask you both this, as both of you are obviously involved in the management. How do you stay on top of, in this case, the volatility we see in the grain markets today? And you said, Joe, in the video that you go by hunches or gut feelings, that was the phrase. But these are tumultuous times, day by day anyway, in the grain trade. So how do you approach that?
Well, a long time ago, we subscribed to DTN, and we would watch the markets daily, hourly at sometimes. And I got to the point where it just absolutely drove me nuts. I couldn't stand watching that flexibility, and we don't sell it every day. And so I got to thinking, why am I beating myself up watching this thing? Because I'm not using it as my strategy. And so I started looking at different publications. Okay, for forecasting here, we've got great economists, that are forecasting outlooks all the time. And so look at the charts and see what the ups and downs are. And there again, know what your bottom line is. And that's where farm management comes in. We know exactly where we're at and what our profitability line is. And when we can market at a profit, we're going to do so. We're not going to hit the highs, but goodness gracious, we hope we never hit the lows either.
Dana, you're the clerk. Do you weigh in once in a while on all this?
No. Not really.
Keeps it simple that way.
It does. I mean, I do all of the bookwork and a lot of errands and that kind of thing, but I spent so many years in town working that I didn't do a lot of hands-on farming. When the boys were little, I used to run tractor and auger wagon and help bale hay and things like that. And this was back in the 80s, and when things got really, really tough, I thought, I had worked at Social Security for 6.5 years, and I had a really good job there, but it had great benefits and all that, but I wanted to stay home with the kids. And so, but it got to the point where Joe was working multiple jobs and farming, and I thought, I have to go back to work. So I worked a year at a bank, and one of the board members of the bank happened to be the superintendent of schools. Their clerk was getting ready to retire, and so they brought me in to train, and that was what I did for 33 years then. And I was very fortunate. I retired March of 2020, and COVID really hit the schools about a week after I left. So I have not had to enjoy all that the new clerk did. But no, I haven't been involved with the marketing or anything like that at all.
You've grown the operation over the years that you've discussed in the videos to some extent. What factors have the two of you weighed extremely carefully before you've invested in be it real estate, be it equipment? What things do you process before you pull the trigger on something that will be a major capital investment or what have you?
Well, you've got to look at where you're at. You've got to know, or at least you think you have to know, that new purchase of land, especially if that's going to be a 20-year loan, that you're in it for that time, that it can be profitable. It will never pay for itself, but do you have the assets to make it pay along the way? And can you do it fairly comfortably? Usually I could get 2 of the 3. That purchasing and doing it comfortably was probably one that I could never get through. But that's kind of the criteria I'll try to look at. And then equipment, do you really need it? That's the first point. Can you get by without it for a year? What's the next year going to bring you? What kind of value will it bring to the farm for the next few years? And so having that son that's dealt in the equipment lines for 10 years, that brought a lot of help to us about 10 years ago. The oldest son, I had to kind of go back a little bit. He's on his phone almost every minute. So he's one of those guys that really looks at the markets all the time too. So we bounce those ideas off. But the equipment is exactly the same way. I haven't purchased any land in the last 3 years. The farm that I worked on when I was in high school. We finally purchased that 160 3 years ago for the family. And, so we were real thankful we had that opportunity. But always like the thought that we can visit with each other and know whatever purchase we're having, that we talk to more with each other. So communication is the key, I think.
Following up a bit on that, looking toward your next generation now involved in the operation, is consistent growth an essential in terms of scale and scope to sustain the operation for the next 2 or 3, whatever generations? Is that a challenge for a farm that's not already 15, 20,000 acres or what have you? Is that something that we're worried about or wonder about, keeping that growth going?
Well, you always worry about it because some of our land is owned, it's leased, and so, we have a couple of 5-year leases, but everything else is year to year. And, over the last 47 to 8 years, we've learned that you're not going to keep all that land all the time. You're going to grow it. And we have farmed a lot of different places over the years. There's just no guarantee you're going to have one from year to year sales. The family decides to sell out, or somebody else has offered them a whole lot more money. So what you lose, sometimes you pick up and you just roll with it. As far as overall growth, the 2 families, besides the hired man, we're at a pretty comfortable level of operation. And personally, now the boys will probably kill me, but I don't see that I have to grow a lot. We can sustain it. So I think, I get so big you can't handle it and do the ultimate job. And I kind of think that's where we're at.
Questions?
Chris, you said the boards are not going to kill you. That's it. Status quo.
Is there argument in the family?
I'm not going to say they kill me. They might disagree a little bit because, when I was young, I wanted to expand. I wanted to grow. And I knew if I was going to get anywhere, I had to. And I'm sure that they have those same thoughts, that if they want to bring 4 family members in later on, that maybe they think they need to grow before I would totally get out or something. So I would never say to them, don't bring any more on. You have to do what you think's best too. I would never want to try to run their lives because my parents definitely didn't try to run mine. And they were very supportive. In fact, they give their life trying to set it to where we could make a full-time job out of farming. So I would never ever tell my sons that, no, you can't grow. It would be futile to start with because they've got minds of their own. And they're smart young men too. They're not boys, they're 40 to 41 years old. And they've got their own thoughts on how big they want to be. And I'll support them 100%.
With your 4 different entities, how do you handle joint equipment purchase decisions, thanks with your sons? And how, I assume that you don't have a lot of duplication of equipment. How do you handle charging out the cost of that overhead costs to the entities? That's not being too detailed.
I'm going to be honest with you. It was real tough growing up through the 80s, especially. Interest rates got high, and we worked off the farm. We did everything to scrimp and save and grow and build. So I'm going to tell you that I don't charge my sons anything for my equipment. They work their tails off each and every day, and they've earned the right to use the equipment. They pay for their fuel costs, they pay for their fertilizer, their seed, but the equipment cost is spread across the total operation. And right now, we purchase the equipment ourselves, and we let them use it, you know, for part of their wages of working on the rest of the farm, you might say.
You got other kids besides the boys involved
We do. We have one son that works for an implement dealer in Iowa. He and his family live up there. He's never wanted to be back on the farm, but we're very proud of him that agriculture is still in his blood, and he loves it. He loves what he does. He's a parts manager for that dealership there. You can never take agriculture out of these kids at that same life, even our daughter.
But if you believe you're, is there any problem with making concessions to your farming sons that might cause a problem for non-farming kids?
No, and that's part of the job that we have, or probably the trials that we have, passing it on to the next generation. The two that are working on the farm each and every day are probably going to get a little bit bigger benefit from what's being passed on. But they understand that. I truly believe they understand why the other two will probably get a little bit extra as far as total land or equipment goes. You know, it was their choice not to come back to work on the farm. And, you know, everything's not equal in this life. And I think they totally get that.
This is quite generic, what is the biggest challenge facing Newland Farms right now in any aspect?
Well, I think we just talked about that. You know, to be quite honest, is trying to be fair and equitable when we pass it on to the next generation. You do worry about being fair to the two that are not involved in the operation. And I apologize, I'm kind of sitting over this way. I don't mean to ignore anybody over here. But so yeah, that is probably the largest challenge, because the day-to-day operations, you know, there really isn't a whole lot of squabble. Everybody knows exactly what needs to be done. We go out and get the work done. Everybody starts off checking cattle every day, and then we get to the field. If there's something that comes up and we need to handle it, you know, we do. Is there trials? Absolutely. There's trials every day on the farm of some kind. But you handle it. But the biggest challenge is going to be passing it on to the next generation. We have our trust in case something would happen to both of us, and we spell it out. It needs to be updated, I have to admit, there's no doubt about that. But that's something we should work on all the time.
I'll narrow that down a little more and take full advantage, Joe, of the fact that you are, as the video suggested, a member of the House of Representatives. So let's talk briefly about policy. What worries the two of you as farm operators, or not worries, but has your attention, let's put it that way, in the realm of policy that could affect agricultural production and individual farms?
Well, I'll tell you, I have the pleasure of sitting on the water committee. I sit on the ag budget and the ag committee with Representative Rogers as our chair on that one. But you know, as far as the state is concerned, you know, water is a huge, huge issue. And we just finished up a conference out in Garden City with the full committee being out there and taking tours and having discussions about that. But as far as our own operation, you know, I worry about the next farm plan. Pat Roberts isn't going to be the chair when the next farm bill trip. And so I worry about what happens in our next farm bill. Are we going to have the same safety guards and all the crop insurance that we have now? I worry about that. I worry about, you know, what are we going to do as far as the 30-30? What are we going to do as far as any other underlying safety guards that we have already in place for agriculture? We have to know that things aren't always going to be the same, and we're going to take some hits in different areas, and I think we need to be aware of that. And I think that's where we need to really safeguard against how much debt are we carrying right now, and you know, kind of protecting ourselves on that side so that we have a little bit of safety net of our own besides worrying about what the government's going to do.
That's beyond policy. That's having to do with the cyclical nature of the agricultural economy as well, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. So we hope that the forecast that the farmers give us the next 10 years might be fairly good for us, that we'll hold their feet to the fire on that one. you know, you can't, nothing's guaranteed. Never has been, never will be.
Anybody want to fire any water questions? While we're here. Okay. Anybody have any questions at all? Yeah, go ahead.
Do you all, without getting into details, do you all use the same institution? Do you all have separate banks that you work with? Or?
We do, not totally separate. I use a local bank for what we do. My oldest son uses the bank on some, but for his land, he uses the land bank. My middle son uses the land bank for his land purchases also. It worked out the best for both of them by going through the land bank. But our farm credit, I should say. I date myself there saying the land bank. But, so, yeah, we keep things a little separate as far as our own records are concerned.
Turning it around, what excites the two of you the most, beyond simply having the youngsters, the next generation come in? What excites you about remaining active in agriculture, whether it be technological developments or anything of that sort? What keeps that drive going?
Farming. There's this, the way of life on the farm, there's nothing like it. And as long as I can keep my feet on the soil every day, it's, I can't think of anything better. I've always loved farming from the time I was a little kid. I knew when I was riding on a tractor with my older brother and my dad that that's what I wanted to do. I have to admit, I'm a sucker for green paint. I like to do new equipment. I like the technology on it most of the time, basically when it works right. And I hate it when I can't figure it out. I have to call it on the voice to kind of figure it out for me. But on the other hand, that's a good thing because to rely on your sons to help you out, it's just, to me, there's just nothing better than that.
Dana, weigh in on that too.
I was listening so long, I forgot the question, but that's.
Something about what's exciting you about farming.
I just enjoy farm life. Like I've said, I've worked in town, but I enjoy being on the farm. I enjoy the solitude of a farm in a way. There's always somebody coming and going on the farm. I think it's a great place to have all our grandkids come, and we've got, which you saw in the video, we've got 5 little ones, and then 1 right smack in the middle, and then 5 bigger ones. And so we've got kids from The oldest one is in medical school. She's 22. And our youngest great-grandchild is 5. And so I just enjoy the lifestyle of the farm. I enjoy, and it's probably a good thing because we don't go a lot, and I enjoy being on the farm. So I don't know, maybe it's because I did work in town so much of the time. Now that I'm retired, I just really enjoy being home and taking care of things there. I don't have real high aspirations. I just enjoy the life.
Steady as she goes.
It is.
At this point, we'll open it up to questions as we round things out. Anything that pops to your mind that you'd like to know about the Newland's operation or how they approach their management? Yeah, go ahead.
Politics.
Kansas Farm Bureau. I started out on county level back in 1974, being involved with Farm Bureau. There's not been a year since we've been married that I haven't been on the board of some kind, I guess. I love trying to help others. And through Farm Bureau and seeing the leadership of those ahead of me, I was always in awe, I guess, of those guys. Bill Rogers, again, I've got to mention that because he was just such a great man. But there's others just like him. And after being on the state board of directors for Farm Bureau for almost 8 years, I had no intention to get into politics, but I always loved advocating for agriculture. And my predecessor retired early because of his health, so I was elected in a special election a couple of years ago, and then run for re-election this past year. But when they came to me and asked me if I would run for that open position, I turned them down for 2 weeks. I said, I just had any desire or anything to really be there. But after a couple of weeks of thinking about it, and I thought, man, that is intriguing. It would be an honor to serve in the House. My oldest son called me out. And he said, Dad, you really need to do this. And boy, I'll tell you what, my stress level went from here down to here. And I said, okay. I said, let's give it a go. So the love for agriculture, the love to advocate for agriculture, that's what really put me in line to try and do something more for not for just our family, but I want to help the state.
But to that point, your service is greatly appreciated on behalf of agriculture, both of you, frankly. And we appreciate you taking a few moments to talk about your operation, share your family story as well, and we wish you the best of luck moving forward. Thank you, Joe.
Thank you very much.
Give a hand, please.